Good afternoon. Our first live innerGPS TV on innerGPS, and you're all very welcome. This afternoon, I'm absolutely privileged to introduce to you Sandra Losty, and let me tell you a little bit of how I know Sandra Losty. Big waves from Sandra there. I met Sandra probably about three and a half years ago. Sandra was new in Toastmasters, although she was absolutely quite an accomplished speaker even then. And I was up for elections for public relations manager, and I needed people on my campaign. And Sandra sat me down and said, let me hear what you have to offer before I decide to go with you. And I thought, well, okay, here's a lady who doesn't mince words. So I sat down and I told her my manifesto, and she said, right, I'm right behind you. And she wore my t-shirt, God love you. She wore the t-shirt, and we got it. I became PR manager of Toastmasters, and Sandra was my right-hand lady. And we did amazing work. We did amazing work. I have people coming on here, I have people coming on here who have faced challenges, and excelled. And Sandra Losty is one amazing lady. Not only did she excel, not only did she face her challenges, but she also went and helped people in similar situations. She's an amazing lady. And I'm going to hand over to Sandra and let her tell you how she started this particular journey for her. And please help me welcome. A round of applause. I'm so used to clapping in Toastmasters, but a round of applause to you, Sandra Losty. How are you doing?
Oh, thanks, Karen. Thanks a million. And hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. So my challenges, well, I always start the story with, I was born at a very young age in the Rotunda Hospital. And they brought me home and it all went downhill from there, you know. But I suppose the challenges were primarily in the home, you know, there's no getting away from that. They were there. There was a huge mental health illness. There was lots of inability to cope with that, lots of avoidant techniques, lots of lack of communication. Don't know how I ended up being a speaker. And coupled that then with a lot of fear and a lot of uncertainty, and life became very, very difficult. So to start it off, I suppose, with all sincerity, the main challenge in our house was my dad. My dad was diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic when I was very young, and he died when I was 10. So for half of my life, I know that man was in and out of hospital. And the first half of it, I've some memories, but, you know, not a whole lot. I was far too young, you know. So everything revolved around that. Everything evolved around the episodes that he would have. Now, that was back in the 70s, Karen, you know. So there wouldn't have been the support for people with mental health issues that there is now. Now, there's still a long way to go now, but it was much worse back then. So people were given lots of electric shock treatment. I remember going up to St. Brendan's when it was there many a time, and whoever brought me up would say, how is he today? And that would determine whether I was allowed in the door or whether I had to sit in the waiting room with a colouring book.
Okay.
You know, so if he wasn't well, then obviously I wasn't allowed to see him. So, but one of the days, I don't know how it fell apart, but I went in, and with my older sister, I imagine, because my mother was in hospital, and there he was, smoking a cigarette. He smoked consulate. So I don't know if you remember the smell of consulate cigarettes. They were
minty or menthol or
eucalyptus
something.
type kind of smell. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, and smoking the cigarette, dangling out of his mouth, and drooling out of the other side. You know, and wearing a bottom of his pajamas and a shirt that was incorrectly buttoned up, and one sleeve of a cardigan in. And my father was a busman. Now, he wore a uniform that you could eat your dinner off. Like, he took such pride in his appearance. And that's one memory that stays with me around that time going up to see him, was he was unrecognisable because of that. But they had given him quite a heavy dose of electric shock treatment, so he wasn't able to function, you know. So when he was in the home, which I remember his whole life being determined by little brown envelopes with tablets in them and the colours of them. And this colour meant that, and that colour was at this time of the day, and the other colour, and all that. That's go and get daddy's tablets, the blue ones, or that sort of stuff, you know. But he had quite big episodes of delusion. And several times Karen, he tried to take his own life. And he was quite violent with himself, you know. When he wasn't violent, he was extremely religious, extremely, like, he would think the Virgin Mary was in the room with him, you know. And several times he tried to take his own life. But this particular day, in March 1977, wherever the delusion was he was in, my mother was in hospital, as I said, and she had dangerously high blood pressure. So he'd come out and she'd go in. But he was out this day, and whatever was going on in his head, my sister and my brother were there. And I'm sure the delusion said they shouldn't be here, get rid of them, or something to that effect. And he attacked both of them. And my brother survived with some minor physical issues, injuries rather. And my sister died of her injuries. And she didn't die until the next day. They had done a very serious operation on her. And my sister, my older sister Mary, at the tender age of 21 years of age, had to make the decision to turn her life support machine off.
Oh.
You know? So Dad had taken his own life, so he left the house deceased. And Rita died the next day. So in 24 hours, I went to bed one night, and in 24 hours, 2 people were gone, you know. But that morning before I left for school, he was eating toast. He was making us tea and toast, and I don't like butter. I hate butter. And he was eating toast. He bent down to give me a kiss, and there was butter on his lips, and I went, "That's disgusting," or something to that effect, as you do when you're 10, you know. Yeah. And although I was an introverted child, can you believe? I was extrovert when I knew people, but when I didn't know people, I was quite introverted, you know. So I had no bother expressing myself how disgusted I was with this butter. And off I went to school. And when I found out what had happened, something in my psyche decided that I was to blame for that, because I had wiped away his kiss. He killed himself because I had wiped away that kiss. And then because he killed himself and because I had wiped away that kiss, Rita died. Now, at 10 years of age, I couldn't have articulated that to you. You know, this is years and years of working on myself in therapy and all that sort of stuff, you know, that you start to unfold and uncover that story. So I carried that burden for a long number of years, up to quite recently, actually. And then I added to the burden because when I was 16, my mother died. Now, I shared a bed with my mother. And after Daddy and Rita died, there was a big rejig about the beds and the bedrooms and all that sort of stuff. And I got the master bedroom, but I got the master bedroom to share with my mother, you know. And one Monday morning, I was working at the time, I was 16, and my brother came in and said, "Sandra, we're late for work, call Mammy." And I went to shake her, and there was no rousing her. And shook her again and realised how cold she was. But she wasn't stone cold, she was cold. And then we realised that she had actually passed, you know. Now, I had a row with my mother the night before over making the bed. Like, it was such an onerous task on a 16-year-old to make the bed. And then I have this row, and then the next day she's dead. So something in me, Karen, said, when you get close to people or you have a row with people, they die. You're dangerous.
Can we back
again?
Up
I wouldn't have.
Can we back up there a little bit, because that's huge. And whatever about now, there is the counselling support, there is the child support, there is all that. Back in 77, that wasn't there, and kids try and rationalise what is going on, and we're always the centre, either the fault or the reason. That's a lot for a 10-year-old and a 16-year-old to process, and sometimes we don't.
That's it exactly. Is in the absence of support and helping kids understand what has happened, they make it up themselves, and that's exactly what I did. I had to make sense of it in some way. You know, all kids do. They have to make sense of it. And in the absence of any other offering of explanation, it had to be me. Like, because I had evidence that I had done something that was bad. I had wiped away my daddy's kiss. I had had a row with my mother. You know, they were bad things, you know, that you do. So there was no support. I remember after my father died, actually, there was a social worker assigned to us, but she was probably about 20 or 25. And no disrespect to anybody who's a social worker at 25, but she had absolutely no capacity to support my mother, who was a woman in her 50s, had lived a horrendous life already, you know, because of the times and wherever. And then the situation that she was dealing with, you know, there was no real support there. You know, counselling wasn't a thing back then.
Yeah.
You know, or it was for people who could afford it, but there was no low cost affordable counselling or anything like that. Your neighbours having a cup of tea at the kitchen table were your counsellors, and you're smoking. You know, that they were your counsellors, you know. And then my counsellor became alcohol. That's what, you know, came in and took the place of all of that. So those, carrying those very blameful ways or thinking beliefs that I was responsible for the death of these three people, and not realizing that. I didn't actually know that I was thinking that. It had gone in so deep that I didn't even become aware of it.
Of course.
But I drank to make sure I didn't feel it. You know, the drink masked that possibility of ever surfacing. And that's how I coped. You know, I turned to drink. I turned to drink quite early. I was in school. I used to go to school and drink in school at lunchtime and smoke. And again, teachers, I remember a teacher saying, and I overheard a teacher saying, "So what can you expect after what she's been through?" So there was knowledge there that I was drinking and smoking, but nobody did anything about it.
I was going to say, you probably got away with a little bit more purely.
I did.
And, you know, who could blame you or them, you know. So if we roll on a couple of years then.
Yeah, roll on a couple of years. And I'm drinking. It got very heavy. I went downhill very quickly. By the time I was 19, I was drinking alone in the house. And I was drinking from the off license, you know. I was working. Every single penny was counted in drink, how much drink I'd get, what's the cheapest drink I can get that I can get more of, what's the highest volume, for all that sort of stuff. And that's where how my mind worked. It was just consumed with it, totally and utterly consumed with it, to a point where I didn't count, well, when I buy food, this is what's left over. It was, if I've had left over, I'll eat.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it affected me. And it went on like that for longer than I really would have wanted it to. But I suppose in the bigger picture of things, it stopped, a dead stop at 28. So I'm very lucky at 28, this came crashing down around me, you know. And I had been on a bender the day before. I'd had reflexology. And while I'm not blaming reflexology, I am saying reflexology is powerful, you know. And reflexology and a bottle of whiskey.
Oh. It's a combination.
It's a combination, all right. And I woke up the next morning hallucinating. And I seen my sister Rita, who was dead for how many years at that point?
Almost 20.
12 years or something, or 10, 18 years at that point. And she was in the corner and she said, "You can't go out like that. You have a hole in the top of your head." And while I felt my head was up here, up in the ceiling, and my body was in the bed, I vaguely kind of going, she's dead. She can't be here. She's dead. But it frightened me.
Yeah.
And what did I do? I went to the pub. I got so frightened, I went to the pub. And I brought my nephew with me, who was 14 years of age, because I was afraid to go on the bus on my own. I was rattling, absolutely rattling. And brought him into the pub, started another bender. And then I wanted to send him home because he was in the pub too late and I was being given out to for having a child in the pub. I sent him home thinking it was 10 o'clock at night, Karen.
Wow.
I would have sent that child home 14 years of age on 2 buses across the city. And lucky for me, it was 6 o'clock. So when I woke up the next morning after that, I was in the pub was about 11 o'clock. I looked at the drink. The glass was half full, literally, or half empty. And I looked at the empty part of that glass and I went, this is not working anymore. And it was almost like I just got this, this relief of something. So I managed to get back to where I'm from originally and went to sleep, woke up the next morning, couldn't believe I had done that to the child. Like, out of all of the things I've done in my life, I could not believe I did that. And I screamed up at the heavens, I can't freaking do this anymore. I just can't do this anymore. I went back to my sister's because I was staying with her for a few weeks. Back to my sister's, and when she opened the door, she said to me, I hope you're here to pack your bags. And I went, yeah, I am, because I was full of pride, So while I was ready to say, I need help, the minute she said that, my pride was like, and I had a £5 in my pocket. That's all I had left down my money at £5 it was at the time, 1995. So I was packing my bags into these little bin liners. And she came in and said to me, and these words resound in my ears every time I think of them. She said, do you want a cup of tea before you go?
Wow.
And in that moment, I realized she was the only person in the world at that moment in time who gave 2 hoot nannies about me. Everybody else I had ostracized. Everybody else was gone. Everybody else didn't care whether I was living or dying. And she was the only person that really had any care about what happened to me. And something in me said, yes, I call it divine intervention, because if it was left to me, I'd have said, shove your tea, And I sat down at the table and I said to her in that moment, Mary, I know now once I start, I can't stop. And that was the first time I had honestly admitted, once I started, I couldn't stop. And she'd been telling me this for years, So that's where life actually happened then. I got to a meeting that night. Someone came and had a chat with me. I went to a meeting that night and I heard people there talking about horrendous stuff going on in their life and they weren't drinking. And I thought, my God, it's possible. Like, it's possible. It was the first time I got hope. I got hope that you could overcome this drinking thing and not just be managing it or managing it from bender to bender, And I haven't taken a drink from that day to this. And that was on the 21st of March, 1995.
And you have a special, you've got a special coming up on
life has
Sunday.
Happened.
And on Sunday you are...
I do. On Sunday I'll be 9,000. Go on.
9,000 days. Would you be 9,000 days on Sunday? And you're doing a special run?
On Sunday the 10th of March. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
I'm doing a remembrance run in the Phoenix Park. Let me show you the t-shirt. I have 2 t-shirts. So this is the official t-shirt, which is the emblem of the remembrance run, the 5K.
Lovely.
And I can officially call myself a runner now.
Well done.
So that's the official t-shirt. But I got this t-shirt done up because as a result, Karen, of doing a journey on the Camino over 2 different stretches, I wanted to bring the feelings I had about my family and my guilt and letting go of that guilt and understanding it wasn't me. For the first time, genuinely going, you are not responsible for those people's deaths at all, And that came as a result of that journey on the Camino, if anybody knows it. So this is the only picture of the 3 people. That's Mommy, Daddy and Rita.
Wow.
It's the only picture we have of the 3 of them together. And I got this t-shirt done up. I'm going to wear this on Sunday in memory of them so that I think about them all as people who have passed and not just my dad who committed suicide and then my sister and my mother who died in a different way. I'd kind of separated him out without realizing it. So it's bringing them all together. And then I also want to remember those brothers and sisters in the fellowship that we call brothers and sisters who have fallen to addiction and alcoholism. And I want to remember them in a very significant way. We lose a lot of people to addiction and to alcoholism. And I want to celebrate by saying and showing 9,000 days sober today, a day at a time. And I'll be thinking of those people, those very special people that I've lost over the years. And yeah, so there's lots of remembering on Sunday. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's an amazing story. And again, how I met you was through Toastmasters. And I remember sitting in on some of your speeches, because I know you're passionate about the work you do, and we'll get into that now in a few moments. But the passion and the integrity, I always found was striking with you, and the drilling down to the reason. You know, you didn't just take things on face value. You had to help somebody get really clear on what was going on for them, so then you could help them move forward. And your passion has come through in your stories, and the work you've taken on since then is amazing. And you are now what can I say? You're repurposing all that knowledge into providing yet again a service for people who are in recovery. You are the recovery coach, and you don't only talk your talk. You have walked it. You've walked it literally, the Camino, and 9,000 days.
Yes.
Can you give us some insight into that? And can I just say before you start, you told your story very fast because of the medium we have here. But I've heard you, and I've actually been quite touched even to hear it again today. But you use storytelling amazingly to convey emotion. And I know that each time you tell a story, and not just your story, but a story, people are moved. And that's what we want out of storytelling, is that somebody is helped, supported to move on, and they have that aha moment. And so you have that in spades, Sandra. I can say that from seeing you so many times.
Thank you.
Great. So tell us all about the recovery coach. What this is all about.
So the recovery coach came about as a result of working with a group of women in a treatment centre, helping them to improve their recovery skills or their public speaking skills, because they tend to have to deal with a lot of official bodies, you know, like courts and solicitors and that sort of stuff, and that can be quite intimidating. And when your skills are limited in terms of communication, it can be frustrating when you can't get your point across.
Yes.
So this was the reason that we went in there, and as is wont to happen, you go in with a reason and something else develops, and it becomes like, this is why I was here. I thought it was this, but actually it's this, you know?
Yes.
And what happened then, Karen, was it became very apparent that what people share when they only have their experience of addiction, what they share is the rawness of that, you know? And very often they're not connected to the rawness of it, because you have to divorce yourself. You have that head up here and the body down here. Mm-hmm. It's a way of coping with, I can talk about this really serious thing here, but not feel it. And there's no feeling, there's no healing in that, there's no transformation in that, you know? So this became quite apparent. So through the course of the course, we started to talk about the experiences rather than the individual elements, you know? So it was like, this happened, and then this happened, and then this, and then at this time, and then he said, and then she said, and we were losing the essence of what that experience was for the people. So we stopped dead and we decided, okay, this is what we're going to do. So the girl said, we don't know how to do that. Will you teach us? And I thought, happy days, happy days. So the goal was that they would stand up and do a 2-minute or 3-minute kind of spiel about themselves. And of course, what became very apparent was they didn't want to say anything that they didn't want other people to know. Okay, because addiction is full of shame, it's full of stigma, and you're managing all of that. You're managing preempting other people's judgment of you, and then the actual experience itself. There's loads of balls in the air trying to keep all of this, keeping secrets, but wanting to be honest. So we sat down and we talked about how this could be conveyed in a different way, right? And as a result, and this is quite a shocking story, but I want to say it as it is, because this is exactly what happened. So this one particular girl was afraid to speak because she said, what if I say the thing I don't want people to know? And what she didn't want people to know was that she was a street worker. To feed her addiction, she worked the streets. And I said, okay, well, we don't have to say that. You know, you're in complete control of what you say, but they're so used to having other people controlling their lives that this was a new concept. What do you mean I can say what I want? So when we talked about the different ways that that could be described, we left it at, look, decide on the day if you want to share that bit of your story, because if you don't, it's not going to take away from the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, okay. So there was no pressure on it to share, and that was fine. So she told her story in a lovely, emotional way, very connected. People were relating to her. And then she said, and I tensed up immediately. I went, oh my God, what's she going to say? I was so nervous for her, you know. So she didn't say I was a street worker and I got paid for sex. But what she did say was, at the age of 11, I was exploited sexually for the first time. Well,
Wow.
the tears rolled down my face that this girl took that experience of shame and stigma and a whole societal shame and stigma. It wasn't just the people in the room, like street workers are looked down on straight away. And she took that experience, took the judgment out of it, and told us exactly what happened for her. She was sexually exploited. That's exactly what happened. And I just went, we need to help people tell their stories and their experiences in this way. Because if we don't, all they have is the shame and the stigma, and that kills people. Even without drugs, that kills the spirit, you know. So that's how that came about. Was I really, really want to help people to turn that darkest place in their lives, that darkest experience, into their biggest asset. Because what happened that day, other girls nodded, they listened to her, they gave her a hug, they said how brave she was. There was no judgment. Someone even said, that happened to me, you know.
Yeah.
So in a moment, there was healing and transformation.
And you know, it's so right. I think when people are in addiction, when they have addiction, and not just alcohol, several addictions, we disconnect from people and we move further away, and then the shame comes in, and then we move further away because we don't want to tell our story, you know. And unfortunately, it is people in that situation that we're saying, you know, if you tell your story, you can move closer. However, if people are more open-handed, open-hearted to say, to greet them, or at least embrace them and bring them in towards them, so then they're more secure in telling their story, in dropping the shame. I think then it'd be more inclusive. People can reconnect. We can reconnect and find the love there. So I think what you're doing, Sandra, is powerful. I think it will help so many people in this situation, help bridge that gap and make it more accessible and easier for them to tell their story, and others will benefit from it without a shadow, from hearing their story. Sandra, where can people contact you? Your email address is, let people know in case they want to contact you.
Yeah. So we're in the process of developing the Recovery Coach branding. So at the moment, you can contact me by email on the recoverycoachie@gmail.com. I have a Facebook page, Recovery Coach IE, @Recovery Coach IE. There's nothing populated on it just yet, but it's there, it's secure. And they would be the main places that you can find me. You can connect with me as Sandra Losty on Facebook. That's no problem at all. And I think that's it for the moment. That's kind of it for the moment. Yeah.
So if anybody who's watching, you know, do tag a friend who you think may need support, may need Sandra's support. People who've been in recovery, who've started those first tentative steps a couple of years, and they're looking to just, you know, come out of the shame, of the shadow of what they went through. No judgment. Sandra is an amazing coach. She can help you transform your past into something that will be an asset for sure. And so we'll leave it there. But if you want to contact Sandra, Sandra Losty, recovery coach, or email her if you'd like to. If you want to keep it really private, email her on recoverycoachie@gmail.com. Can I say, as always, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, to connect with you, Sandra. You're an amazing, shining light. And I wish you every success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
And thanks everybody. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.